Alright, one of the many disagreements I have with people in the Star Trek community overall is I actually don't tend to care that much for Deep Space Nine. Most notably, I find the Dominion War arc pretty boring, and the religious episodes are extraordinarily uninteresting. I kind of like the relationship between Cisco and Jake, but I really kind of hate Dax. Till they killed her and replaced her in the last season. I don't know, I just found the character weirdly abrasive and sometimes just kind of mean, but everyone else on the crew I'm just sort of ambivalent about. It was an okay-ish show, I suppose. But another thing I'm constantly told is that this series somehow shows the true side of the Federation, or how things actually might be, or the grim and gritty reality of this world. Ugh. And that's a whole other can of worms, but there's this one line that pops up every now and then about this that basically sums up what I think people are trying to get at.
Well, it's easy to be a saint in paradise.
I'll grant them this, that line does seem like something that Benjamin Sisko would say, so that is keeping in the character. And it is true that a distance from something can alter your perspective, but I do have to say that oftentimes distance from something tends to give you a better perspective on things than people who are in the grim dirt dealing with it. And this is also one of those lines that is brought up to try and rectify the moral quandary that our second officer here was a former terrorist. You know, that thing that Harvard did a review on that's shown to be a solution that won't work to, hey, a problem that exists. So there's an upgrade from, everything else I usually complain about. But I just feel like I want to respond to that statement right here, right now, and say, it's never easy. During the time of the Roman Empire, there was a very popular philosophy called Stoicism. And without getting too much into detail, Stoicism is a form of virtue ethics that ultimately is about reminding people to worry about what you can control and don't worry about what you can't. And two of the most well-known Stoic philosophers are Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius. Both of these people were people who were constantly striving towards, being what they would call a Stoic saint. And Epictetus was born a slave. He lived most of his life as a slave, in some ways a remarkably privileged slave, I suppose. His master did let him learn to read and the like, and that is a great privilege, but he was a crippled slave. Whereas Marcus Aurelius was literally the emperor of Rome for the longest time. He's actually kind of renowned as being like the last of the 5 good emperors. And both of these men, one born to incredible privilege, and one born as literally a slave, were constantly striving towards that goal of being a saint. And it doesn't look like it was any easier for one or the other. I mean, Marcus Aurelius was one time quoted as saying, "If you must live in a palace, live well in a palace," pointing the difficulty of being in this seat of power. I don't know, that's really just a line that's constantly brought up to me about why Deep Space Nine is the most brilliant Star Trek episode, or the most brilliant Star Trek series, and it's something that I don't agree. I think it's difficult to be a good person regardless of your situation. It's something that I struggle with, and I imagine it's something that anyone struggles with. But you know what? It's not going to get better if you don't try. Life before death, Radiant.